Okay, so get ready because we are diving into something really unique. This time, a 127-track concept album. And it's a tribute to gospel legend Sandi Patty.
Wow. 127 tracks.
You got that right.
That's commitment.
Yeah, it is. And it's created by Snoopi Botten. And he's a musician who's been using Deck Talk to make music since 1989. So,
Oh, wow.
pretty early adopter there.
Way before it was cool.
I know, right? And you might be familiar with Sandi Patty's vocals, those powerful vocals, We Shall Behold Him and Via Dolorosa.
Of course. Yeah, she's got such incredible range.
Yeah, she's amazing. But what makes this tribute album so special is that he has interwoven his own life story into this album.
Oh, interesting. So like a musical autobiography.
Kind of, yeah. And we've got audio excerpts from the album itself, but then also these commentary tracks where he opens up about everything.
Oh, wow. So we get the music and the behind the scenes.
Exactly. And the behind the scenes is amazing. We're talking everything from his use of AI to sing to his experiences with disability and faith.
Okay, so it's personal, it's spiritual, it's technological.
It is all of those things, yeah.
What was your first impression of the material? Anything jump out at you?
Well, just the sheer depth of his story. I mean, he's a tech pioneer, a disability advocate, and a man of deep faith. This album isn't just a musical tribute, it's a testament to the resilience of the human spirit.
Yeah, I agree. And for me, the thing that really struck me was how he uses AI to create the music. You know, he uses a program called Deck Talk, and it's like an early form of vocal synthesizer.
Yeah, right? Because Snoopi has cerebral palsy, and that makes traditional singing very difficult.
Makes sense.
And he's been using this technology since 1989, which, as we said, way before AI was even, a mainstream thing.
Yeah, you almost never hear about people using AI for music back then.
I know, and he talks about how it took him 5 years to master using Deck Talk for singing.
5 years. Wow, that's dedication.
It really is. It speaks to his passion for music and his determination to overcome obstacles, and he talks about manipulating the software to create melodies and harmonies, basically hacking it to become an instrument in its own right.
That's fascinating. It's like he's turning this limitation into a tool for creativity.
Exactly. So how does Snoopi, a musician using AI, connect so deeply with the music of Sandi Patty, who is, known for her incredible natural vocal abilities?
Well, it all goes back to when he was 15 years old. He turns on the radio and hears Sandi Patty's "How Majestic Is Your Name." It was a brand new song at the time.
Really?
Yeah, and he describes it as this profound moment, almost like a divine intervention.
That's amazing. You can just hear the emotion in his voice when he talks about it.
Oh, absolutely.
And that experience really ignited a lifelong passion for Sandi Patty's music. And so his sister sends him her first album, Lift Up the Lord, and it became like a constant companion for him.
I love that. The power of music to provide comfort and inspiration during difficult times.
Yeah, absolutely. And this connection to Sandi's music just went hand in hand with his passion for technology. And even in high school, his tech skills were very apparent. He was bored with basic math, and he wanted to just skip ahead to algebra.
Oh, I can relate to that. I was always trying to jump ahead in math, too.
Yeah, but his teacher wasn't convinced that he was ready for it.
So what did he do?
Well, Snoopi, being Snoopi, made a bet with the teacher. He said, if I can create a computer video, will you give me an algebra book?
Okay, that's a pretty good deal. But wait, this is the 80s, right?
Right, long before YouTube tutorials and all the fancy software we have now.
So how did he even make a computer video back then?
He spent his entire Christmas break on an Apple II computer painstakingly coding these intricate graphics and synchronized them to How Majestic Is Your Name.
Wow, talk about dedication.
And it worked. The teacher was totally blown away, and Snoopi got his algebra book.
That's a great story.
Yeah.
So I guess he got to go straight to algebra then.
Well, there's a bit of a twist. The school board was so impressed by the video that they decided to create a programming class.
Okay, that makes sense. But what's the twist?
The class required algebra, which meant that Snoopi, the very person who had inspired the creation of this class, couldn't even enroll in it.
Oh, no. Seriously?
Yeah.
Are you kidding?
Not kidding. He even points out in the commentary track how the school board had to sit there listening to Sandi Patty while watching his video, knowing that he was excluded from the class that his video had inspired.
Oh, the irony.
Oh, that's incredible.
Yeah, it's a reminder that systems, even with good intentions, can sometimes fail to recognize and nurture talent, particularly for individuals with disabilities.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like they were so focused on the rules that they missed the whole point.
Yeah, exactly. But, Snoopi doesn't let that stop him. he continues to find ways to express himself through music and through technology. And in fact, track 3 on the album is Make His Craze Glorious, and it dives into how he uses music to celebrate his faith and also challenge perceptions about disability.
Okay, so that's a theme that runs throughout his work.
Yeah, very much so. It's interesting how he takes what some might see as limitations and turns them into opportunities for creative expression and advocacy. He's not asking for pity. He's demanding recognition and challenging those societal norms.
You can feel that boldness in his music. And in the commentary for the next track, which is his rendition of How Majestic Is Your Name, he opens up about another side of his story, his struggles with depression.
Oh, wow. So he gets really personal on this album.
He does. He speaks very candidly about his experiences, including his time in a state hospital.
It's interesting how he talks about the state hospital because it's not the negative experience that we often associate with those institutions.
Right. He says he felt safe, he felt supported, and surprisingly, he felt free to be himself.
Free in a state hospital. It's not something you hear every day.
I know, right? He had access to GED classes. He could come and go as he pleased. It's almost as if the rigid structure of his life outside the hospital was contributing to his depression.
So for him, it was more about reclaiming his autonomy and finding an environment that allowed him to thrive.
Exactly. But here's another twist. After just 3 months, he's forced to leave, even though he felt it was the best place for him at the time.
Oh, wow. So even though he found freedom in this environment, the system still failed him in a way.
Yeah, it highlights the need for more personalized mental health care, recognizing that what works for one person might not work for another.
Absolutely. One size fits all doesn't work when it comes to mental health.
No, it doesn't. He was devastated to leave, but he found solace in Sandi Patty's So Far, which he includes as track 5 on the album. But it wasn't just Sandi's music that provided comfort. He had a remarkable friend named Joy Bubbles.
Joy Bubbles.
Okay.
That's a name that sparks curiosity.
Yeah, he was a pastor who had chosen to be 5 years old forever after a really difficult childhood.
Okay, now that's a concept I'd need to hear more about.
Huh.
What does it even mean to choose to be 5 years old forever?
Well, for Joy Bubbles, it meant embracing childlike wonder and joy. He even ran a phone ministry for terminally ill children, and it was all about bringing light and laughter into their lives.
That's such a beautiful idea. Using playfulness to connect with children who are facing unimaginable pain and fear. It speaks volumes about the power of human connection, even when it's through technology.
Yeah, and he had an incredible gift for reaching these children who had shut down because of trauma. And he shares this amazing story about Jessa, a 4-year-old girl who stopped speaking after witnessing her father's death. And Joy Bubbles. He used simple objects like cellophane and paper towels to create these magical worlds of play.
Wow, what a beautiful way to connect.
And incredibly, after weeks of these interactions, Jessa spoke her first words. She said, "Bubble bubbles."
Oh, that's so sweet. It just shows how a little creativity can sometimes break through that silence and trauma.
And it had a lasting impact on her. Years later, she called Joy Bubbles and read him 5 Peas in a Pod by Hans Christian Andersen.
Really? Years later?
Years later. It's incredible.
That's a testament to the power of those moments of connection.
It really is. But Joy Bubbles' impact wasn't limited to his work with children. Snoopi tells another story about a woman named Ruth who was contemplating suicide after her husband's death.
Oh, wow.
She was at a hotel feeling completely lost when she saw Joy Bubbles playing in the pool, and his pure joy and exuberance just struck a chord within her, and it gave her a reason to keep going.
Sometimes it's those unexpected moments of joy that can make all the difference.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that even the smallest acts of kindness can have ripple effect. We never know how our actions might touch the lives of others.
And speaking of unexpected turns, Snoopi reveals his own brush with mortality when he was diagnosed with leukemia.
Oh, wow. So he's really been through a lot.
He has, but instead of despair, he talks about how his diagnosis strengthened his faith and made him feel more alive than ever.
That's incredible, how he can find hope and purpose even in the face of such a serious challenge.
He does, and this unwavering faith fuels his advocacy for other people with disabilities.
What practical steps can faith communities take to be more inclusive? I mean, is it just about ramps or is there more to it?
It's about creating a culture of welcome and belonging where everyone feels valued and respected.
Yeah, creating that sense of true belonging goes beyond just the physical space.
And speaking of overcoming obstacles, he also reveals another unexpected turn in his story, a dark chapter from his time in a nursing home after his adoptive mother died.
Oh, wow. So we're going to hear about that.
He was only 18 at the time, not yet equipped to live on his own, and the nursing home was supposed to be temporary.
Okay. But I have a feeling it wasn't temporary.
You have a good feeling about that.
Okay, so he's 18 and in a nursing home. What happened?
Snoopy reveals that he actually became a victim of Medicaid fraud orchestrated by the very people who were supposed to be caring for him.
Oh, no. Seriously?
Yeah, and it's awful. The nursing home staff, they essentially held him captive for financial gain. They falsified records claiming that he needed this round-the-clock care that he never actually received. They were making him out to be totally helpless, bedridden, unable to even lift 5 pounds.
That is just awful. And to think they were doing it all for money.
It's infuriating. It was all for $4,000 a month that they were bilking for Medicaid based on these fabricated reports.
I mean, it's just so disheartening to hear that someone would exploit a vulnerable person like that.
Yeah, and this whole experience left a deep scar on Snoopy, and he witnessed firsthand the neglect and isolation that so many nursing home residents endure. He talks about how visitors were rare except around Christmas time when churches would show up singing carols and showering the residents with gifts.
So like they were only seen during the holidays.
He says it felt like a performance almost, like a seasonal display of charity, but it rarely extended beyond those holidays.
Yeah, that makes you think about the difference between performative acts of kindness and genuine, sustained compassion.
Exactly. It's easy to get caught up in the feel-good spirit of giving during the holidays, but true compassion, it means showing up consistently, not just when it's convenient or socially expected.
Right. It's about being there for people all year round.
Yeah, and Snoopy's experience in the nursing home had a profound impact on his worldview. It fueled his desire to advocate for change, to be a voice for the voiceless, and to expose the systemic issues that allow this kind of abuse to occur.
It's inspiring to see how he took that experience and turned it into a force for good.
It is, and he also channeled it into his music. He had always wanted to record a Christmas album, but after the nursing home, it took on a whole new meaning for him.
Oh, I bet it did.
He particularly wanted to include Sandi Patty's song Merry Christmas with Love from her album The Gift Goes On, and it's about finding joy in the midst of loneliness, which was a theme that resonated deeply with him.
I can see why that song would be so meaningful to him.
But he actually faced some obstacles including it. He had these technical difficulties programming the song, and then get this, all of his Christmas sheet music was stolen.
Oh, no.
What bad luck. I know, right? But he didn't give up. He decided to include a rough recording of the song on the album anyway.
Really? So he put it on the album even though it wasn't perfect?
He did. And he explains, that he wanted to share it because it captures a side of Christmas that often gets overlooked, that pain of loneliness and the power of genuine connection.
Makes sense. The holidays can be really hard for people who are feeling isolated.
Yeah, and he emphasizes that the spirit of Christmas shouldn't just be confined to a single month. It's a message that challenges us to think about how we can bring joy and connection to people who feel isolated and forgotten, not just during the holidays, but throughout the year.
Yeah, exactly. We should be thinking about this all the time.
Right. Small acts of kindness can really make a difference. And it's interesting how this theme of finding hope in unexpected places is woven throughout his whole album.
Yeah, we definitely see that, in the stories about joy bubbles and his reflections on his leukemia diagnosis, and even in his determination to create music despite his physical challenges.
Yeah, and speaking of his determination, he talks about how he actually created his own AI version of Deck Talk in 2024,
Right.
and he gave it a more realistic and expressive sound. He wasn't content with just using the existing technology. He wanted to push the boundaries even further.
He's such an innovator. I love that he's not afraid to experiment and try new things.
He's always pushing himself. And he talks about how he faced these low expectations throughout his life, especially regarding his disability. He remembers being in adult workshops that had this incredibly simplistic curriculum, as if people with disabilities weren't capable of learning anything complex.
Oh, that's so frustrating. Like they were being treated like children.
He believes that setting a low bar ultimately leads to stagnation and missed potential.
He has a point.
Yes.
If we don't challenge ourselves and each other, we'll never grow.
And he's a huge advocate for challenging those low expectations. He talks about how young children, they don't initially know that they're disabled. Those limitations are often imposed from the outside.
That's true. It's like society puts these labels on people and then they start to believe them.
Exactly. And he encourages parents and caregivers to foster a sense of agency and possibility in children with disabilities, to allow them to experience setbacks and then learn how to overcome them.
Yeah, building that resilience is so important.
And he reminds listeners that we are all children of God, capable of achieving great things regardless of our abilities or challenges. He even has listeners say their names out loud, followed by the affirmation, "You can do all things through Christ who strengthens you."
Wow, that's powerful. It's a reminder that our worth and our potential come from something greater than ourselves.
Exactly. He goes on to discuss how God created each of us with a unique plan and the gift of creativity, and he encourages listeners to tap into that creativity, to use their passions and talents to make a difference in the world.
So it's not just about making art or music. It's about using our God-given gifts to make the world a better place.
Exactly. And it's fascinating how he connects faith and creativity, suggesting that they're both gifts from God. They're intertwined and inseparable.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
love that. He's challenging the idea that people with disabilities are somehow less capable of creative expression.
He even talks about how learning Spanish from Sesame Street as a child inspired him to program songs in other languages.
No way. From Sesame Street to multilingual programming. That's amazing.
It is. He talks about expanding his music ministry globally and enabling people who couldn't speak to sing in their native tongue.
Wow. So he's breaking down barriers in so many ways.
He really is. And he uses his technical skills to not only create music, but to provide a platform for others. He talks about his friend Blake Roberts, who is blind and was inspired by Snoopy to actually program Deck Talk and sing.
Really? That's awesome.
He even features Blake as a special guest on the album, which is a first in his experience. He talks about the challenges of recording with Blake remotely, and they ultimately opted for a phone recording to capture his message.
A phone recording. That's pretty low tech.
It is, but he asks listeners to overlook the imperfect sound quality and focus on the message itself.
I like that. It's a reminder that it's the message that matters most, not the production value.
And Blake's message aligns perfectly with Snoopy's. He talks about the need for educational systems to really push students with disabilities, to believe in their capabilities rather than limiting them with these simplistic curriculums.
It's a powerful call for change, a shift in how we view and treat people with disabilities.
And this message of empowerment is so deeply intertwined with faith. Snoopy often refers to his own faith as a source of strength and inspiration, and he encourages listeners to embrace their own beliefs and share them with the world.
It's like he sees no separation between his creative pursuits and his spiritual journey. They're woven together, each informing and enriching the other.
Exactly. His story really is a testament to the transformative power of music and technology and faith. It's a reminder that even in the face of adversity, we can find our voice, we can connect with others, and we can make a profound impact on the world.
Yeah, it's truly inspiring. And there's still more of his story to uncover. He continues to explore his connections to Andy Patty's music in the remaining tracks of this album.
We've gone through so much of Snoopy's life already, his incredible use of AI, his advocacy work, those powerful stories about joy bubbles and the nursing home experience.
Yeah, and it really hits home how music can be a lifeline in tough times. A source of strength and inspiration when things get rough.
Totally.
Mm.
So after spending time with this album and with Snoopy's story, what are your main takeaways? What stands out as the most important lessons we can learn from this deep dive?
Well, for me, Snoopy's story really highlights the power of resilience. He faced so many challenges, from physical limitations to systemic injustices, but he never gave up. He used his creativity, his faith, his passion for technology to overcome those obstacles and create something truly unique.
I totally agree. He shows us that we all have that potential to make a difference, no matter what obstacles we face. He inspires us to embrace our passions, challenge those limitations, and use our voices to advocate for ourselves and for others.
And he reminds us of the importance of inclusivity and compassion, to look beyond those surface differences and create a world where everyone feels valued and respected.
His story is truly a testament to the power of the human spirit to overcome adversity and create something beautiful and meaningful. So here's a final thought for our listeners to ponder. What are those tiny emotional nails that you carry? What would it mean to release them to embrace the freedom that Snoopy describes? And how can you use your passions and your unique voice to create a more compassionate and inclusive world? We encourage you to keep exploring those questions and to keep diving deep into the things that matter to you. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for joining us.